Normally, I'd be counting down next generation's 5-star reviews today, but that was before Nintendo announced that a bunch of Genesis games were headed to the Nintendo Switch Online expansion pack. That's right, subscribers are now able to download 4 classic games, including Alien Storm, that weird Genesis port of Virtua Fighter 2, the puzzle game Columns, and the beat-em-up sequel Golden Axe 2. That's genuinely unexpected news, but the question remains, are any of these games actually worth playing in 2022? To answer that question, I decided to flip through the pages of Electronic Gaming Monthly, Mean Machine Sega, GamePro, and more classic magazines to see what the critics said back when these games first came out. Grab your jewels and get ready, because this is another exciting episode of the Nintendo Switch Online Review Crew. When you think of Sega's classic brawlers on the Genesis, the first games that come to mind are probably Golden Axe and Streets of Rage. However, there is one game that should be mentioned in the same breath, and that game is Alien Storm. This is a vaguely futuristic science fiction game starring a group of alien hunters who are Earth's last line of defense against the creepy, crawly space invaders. A mix of both side-scrolling beat-em-up action and first-person shooting, Alien Storm is a fun little arcade conversion that, believe it or not, is directly connected to the characters in Golden Axe. Unfortunately, the critics were not as fond of Alien Storm as they were Sega's fantasy beat-em-up. Giving it an average of 7 out of 10, the critics at Electronic Gaming Monthly were split whether it was a great addition to the Genesis lineup or a swing and a miss. Sushi X raved about the game's incredible graphics, gameplay exactly, and I mean exactly like Golden Axe, and the cool music soundtrack. Be warned though, it is Golden Axe in Future's clothes. Steve, on the other hand, gave Alien Storm a 6 and said, "The only thing disappointing about this title was the lack of real challenge needed to overcome most of the obstacles. Too short when all you do is shoot, shoot, shoot." You also saw the exact same outcome at EGM spin-off magazine Mega Play, which gave Alien Storm an average of 7 out of 10. GamePro, on the other hand, liked it a lot more than Electronic Gaming Monthly. They said that Alien Storm mimics the arcade version perfectly. You get a great variety of easy-to-do moves, and there's never a dull moment. The simultaneous 2-player function in particular is outrageously fun. Don't let the aliens take the Earth by storm. GamePro ended up giving it a perfect 5 out of 5. Now, when we go across the pond, we see a lot of reviews, but not much variety in the actual scores. Megatech gave it a 71%. Mean Machine Sega went with a slightly better 78%, and Sega Pro went one tick higher with a 79%. The lowest score I could find was also the highest score I could find. Let me explain. Using their wacky 1,000-point scale, Ace gave Alien Storm a 699 out of 1,000 and praised the very pretty graphics, but complained that they have a rather flimsy look to them. The sound effects work, but the music doesn't. It's certainly not the kind of thing you're gonna find yourself humming in the streets. It's still head and shoulders above the average Mega Drive arcade effort, but that's only because the majority of them are so poor. Oh, those are fighting words, Ace. With most magazines falling in the 7 and 8 range, Alien Storm is a fun game for anybody who loves beat-em-ups like Golden Axe. Give it a shot. Released only 1 year after Tetris blew up on Nintendo's Game Boy, Sega had their own falling block game to lure people into the Genesis. The first thing you need to know about Columns is that it's nowhere as good as Tetris. That said, it's still a fun puzzler with some fresh ideas and a cool 2-player mode. It's a faithful port of the arcade game that has you matching colored jewels in an attempt to get a high score and humiliate your friends. And while it's definitely not as influential or as good as Tetris, the critics still loved it, right? Right? Well, that depends on which critic you're talking to. Electronic Gaming Monthly definitely didn't love it. In fact, some of the review crew didn't even like it. Giving it a 5 out of 10, Martin called it a decent falling shape puzzle game with a Klax-inspired twist. The speed and execution of the game is good, but the theme gets tiring after a while. Nice try. EGM's highest score came from Sushi X, who gave it a 7 and called it both colorful and satisfying to keep me coming back. Crystals dissolve faster than the value of the yen for blockheads only. Columns earned an average score of 6.25 out of 10 from EGM. Now, you saw a very similar score from Sendai Publishing's Sega-themed magazine, Mega Play, who again gave it a 7 out of 10. In fact, that's the exact same score that we saw Video Games and Computer Entertainment give it in their 22nd issue. Much like EGM, they called it a mashup between Tetris and Klax. They praised the vivid colors and stunning animation, though noted that if you're a fan of arcade action titles and are impatient with puzzle games, you may not care for Columns. However, if you've been dying to lay your hands on a Tetris-type game for your Genesis, you'll be delighted with this one. For what it's worth, the UK-based publications were a lot kinder to Columns. Megatech gave it an 88%, which just so happens to be the exact same score Mean Machine Sega gave it. Sega Pro actually went a little bit higher with a 90%, saying that it was one of the best puzzlers. Pile up shapes for colors to beat your opponent, be it the computer or human. Good graphics and sound, and terrifyingly addictive gameplay. Now, it's worth noting that Sega Pro actually preferred the Master System version, which earned a slightly higher 92%. But of course, that's not the version that you're getting on the Switch. So just scrub that out of your mind and go ahead and download the Genesis version for a good time. Just don't expect it to be as good as Tetris. When Golden Axe launched on the Genesis in late 1989, it was heralded as one of the best arcade ports on the fledgling system. Just 2 years later, the industry was in a very different state. The beat-em-up craze had made way to the one-on-one fighting game, and all the Genesis brawlers were destined to be completely overshadowed by the likes of Streets of Rage. Was there still a place for a straightforward sequel like Golden Axe 2? Yet again, the answer to that question depends on who you talk to. For their part, Electronic Gaming Monthly liked Golden Axe 2, but held back on the high scores. The most generous they got was an 8 out of 10 from Ed, who concluded that if you liked the original Golden Axe like I did, you'll enjoy this update that features new characters, magic, and some nice graphics for the Genesis. Unfortunately, the rest of the review crew gave it straight 7s, with Martin explaining that Golden Axe 2 isn't a total letdown, but it shows little to no improvement over the first. The graphics detail is lousy and the animation is lacking. The only thing that was improved is the magics. Even the music isn't as good. Yeah, that sentiment led to EGM giving Golden Axe 2 an average score of 7.25 out of 10. Now, in case you're curious, the lowest score I could find came from EGM's sister magazine, Mega Play, who gave it a 6 out of 10. As expected, GamePro was a lot kinder to this simple beat-em-up. Giving it a 4 out of 5, they said that Axe 2 is a fun free-for-all which may not be a step forward for Axeaholics, but isn't a step backwards either. Any complaints are in the too bad department and don't overly detract from an otherwise solid slice and dicer. Golden Axe 2 also found support from the critics in the UK, with Segaforce giving it an 84%, Sega Pro giving it a 76%, and those kooks over at Ace going as high as 781. Mean Machine Sega, on the other hand, slapped a 61% on the game and called it a disappointment. They complained that it lacked new ideas or challenge. If you've got the first one, don't even entertain the idea of buying the sequel. Oh, that hurts. You know what? I say download the game and check it out for yourself. I mean, it won't take you long to beat, and it's reasonably fun. When you hear the name Virtua Fighter, you probably picture the revolutionary 3D fighting game that took the arcades by storm. What you probably don't think of is this baffling 2D port Sega released in the final days of the Genesis. Unfortunately, that's the game we're getting on the Switch, whether you like it or not. Released in 1997, the most notable thing about this port is that very few magazines actually reviewed it at the time. All of the regular critics took a pass, including Electronic Gaming Monthly, GamePro, Die Hard Game Fan, and pretty much every other American publication. The good news is that the British were ready to pick up our slack and take one for the team. For their part, Mean Machine Sega kind of liked this version of Virtua Fighter. Giving it a 77%, Matt explained that while the Genesis still has a lot of great games, Sega's outdated hardware has finally reached its limits. Attempting to convert AM2's classic coin-op to a machine that's on its last legs was at best a dodgy idea, and the finished product shows that some things in life are best left alone. And then there's Computer and Video Games, who gave the game a 3 out of 5. Echoing a lot of Mean Machine's thoughts, Ed notes that in still pictures it looks great, but as with Street Fighter Alpha 2 on the Super Nintendo, it doesn't move all that well. On the bright side, CVG praised the music. One particularly excellent part of the game is the music, with the brilliant original tunes converted very well to the Mega Drive sound chip. Unfortunately, while Virtua Fighter 2's Mega Drive is a nice novelty to own, it's just not as good when compared to other Mega Drive games. Yeah, this is a novelty at best. Ugh. Perhaps EGM and the rest of the magazines had the right idea by just ignoring this far too ambitious port. No thanks. Hey, thanks for watching us talk about these classic Genesis games. If you liked what you saw here, then you should know that we post new episodes every time Nintendo adds classic games to their online service. We also have a full playlist with a lot more episodes just like this one. Now, here's the question I have for you. What do you think of this pack of Genesis games? Yay or nay? Is it a step forward or is it a step backward? Let me see your thoughts in the comments below. So, here's the deal. Unfortunately, we had to delay Next Generation's 5-star reviews by a day or so, but don't worry, we're still going to run the new episode this weekend. That's right, you're getting a rare weekend video. While you wait for that, I strongly recommend you click that subscribe button and support what we're doing here. Until then,